Most people have heard of the infamous Golden State Killer in California in the 1970s. Well, a lot of people also know that he was captured using public genealogy websites that helped to narrow down the bloodline of the suspect. And that was revolutionary at the time. Um, which posed a breakthrough in a debate of whether police should have access to genealogy databases without our permission. And today I'm going to argue that they should. These databases are voluntarily public, legally accessible, and have already solved hundreds of violent crimes. Denying police access through mandatory opt-in consent would cripple one of the most effective modern tools for justice now. So many people argue that this violates privacy, aka the Fourth Amendment. And some refer to the Carpenter v. the United States case, where claiming digital data needs heightened protection because they fear the slippery slope that opens the door to surveillance, and they don't like their privacy being invaded, as do many people. But the thing is, users voluntarily upload their DNA to these websites. And the websites are for public use, aka public domain. And according to People v. Booza in 2018, when something is discarded or made publicly available, aka a cigarette butt on a cigarette or cigarette butt on a walkway, or a napkin that has DNA on it thrown in a trash can on the curb, these are public domains, and the police are allowed to confiscate them and allowed to use them for evidence without getting warrants. So, in the Maryland v. King case in 2013, the Supreme Court ruled that collecting DNA is similar to fingerprinting, routine, non-invasive, and constitutional in the right context. So the right context being there has to be justification for it, like more violent crimes, like murder or even rape. But lesser crimes, there shouldn't be a need to invade people's privacy like that for lesser crimes, like burglary or such. So critics also say that there's a risk of false leads or misuse outweighs the benefits, as stated by Guarini in the article in 2018. So they worry about uh, the scope of it, basically. That using this DNA with so many people's different DNA strands and so many lineages that go back in time, that this might lead to false cases or false matches with suspects that weren't really even suspects or should have been. Um, but let's focus on the facts. So these databases have helped solve over 500 cold cases, including rapes, murders, and kidnappings, as said by Perez in their 2019 article. So without them, victims' families might still be waiting for answers or just closure in general, as a lot of genealogy is used to solve particularly cold cases more than anything. Like decades-old cold cases where they really didn't have much evidence or anyone to really suspect. So, in the Golden State Killer case, investigators used GED Match, a public site, genealogy site, to build a family tree that led to Joseph D'Angelo, which ended up being the state killer, named in the family tree as one of the potential suspects. And that led to his arrest and eventual conviction of multiple murders and rapes, which finally concluded the fear and unsettlement that the people in California had at the time, as it was a decades-old cold case at that point, as stated by Guarini in his 2018 article. So polls showed that the public support is actually leaning to support in that and that these departments need access to this information in order to solve violent crimes, as mentioned by Ellick in their 2018 article. So safety and justice matter more to the people in general than the privacy threats that this could face. So in some states like Maryland, they require opt-in consent before law enforcement can use the genealogical data, as mentioned by the Maryland Senate Bill 686 in 2019. So advocates argued that this respects user privacy and prevents misuse, but opt-in models severely limit efficiency. So if only 1 to 2% of people opt in, investigators lose crucial matches. And this builds a, and if they don't have the matching puzzle pieces, then it's very difficult for the case to succeed. Or they'll have to find new routes that take one longer and often more money, which usually comes out of the taxpayers' money. So instead, we need an oversight, not roadblocks. So public access logs and restriction to violent crimes. That is a must when it comes to restricting genealogical websites with law enforcement. There needs to be some oversight, like don't use it for minor crimes like burglary, otherwise that is kind of an abuse of it and of privacy at that point. But for larger scale crimes, that helps very, very much. And so in conclusion, people voluntarily upload their DNA, which makes this fair game in legal court. That they are choosing to use a website and upload personal data onto it that others can theoretically access through public domain. And secondly, genealogy just has solved so many cases, like I mentioned before, like the Golden State Killer and lots of cold cases. And we can have safeguards with this technology without sacrificing justice. So the choice is between safety and privacy. It's between regulation and just more restriction. So denying police access through opt-in consent weakens the justice behind it and makes the investigations go longer, which can lead to losing more evidence. And for the big part, this can have many families lose closure. So, so in conclusion, I believe that we shouldn't use op-ins needed for law enforcement to get the information that they need in order to construct these family trees to help solve these cases. But there are restrictions that can be in place to prevent such huge privacy issues. And I hope I've convinced you today.